my friends, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, or if you're new, hi, hello, welcome for your first time. My name is Kaylee. I'm so happy you are here. Today we are going over every single book that I read in 2024, and then I'm gonna talk more in detail about my top 5 favorite books, and then I'm gonna give you guys a glimpse at my 2025 goals and TBR. This is gonna be a long video, so we're just gonna get right into it. That sun is lovely. So all throughout the year, I kept track of every book that I read in a spreadsheet, and I would post like the title, the author, the rating, and then I would do a quick note about each book. So what I'm gonna do while going through all of the books is I'm just gonna read the quick note that I gave, because I'm not gonna go in depth about all of the books. I just want to share what they were. It's just gonna be like a sentence or two about each book. I got through 67 books this year, which is crazy for me. I don't think I've ever read that many books in a year. That is wild for me, especially since I'm a mom of 3 kids. We're also just gonna go through all of these in chronological order, so starting in January through December, and then at the end I will go through my top 5 favorite books. All right, let's go through all of the books that I read in 2024. So the first one that I read was Bear With Me Now by Katie Shepherd, and I gave it a 2-star, and I said the spicy scenes made me honestly uncomfortable, and I hated the female main character. Book 2 was Finley Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead by Elle Cosimano. I should know this. I gave that book 4 stars, and I wrote, these books make me anxious, but I adore the characters too much to stop reading. Truly, I love that series. Highly recommend. Third book that I read this year was The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. I gave this one 6 stars, which is a very rare thing. 5 is the max, but 6 is like for extra special books. And I wrote the quote, "There is nothing of equal value, will haunt me for the rest of my life. Greatest book ever." I put this in my top 3. We'll talk more about it later. Love this book. And then I read the sequel, A Curse for True Love, also by Stephanie Garber. I gave this one another 5 stars, but this one is not as good as the last one. And I wrote, not the best finish, but overall a 5-star series for me. Highly recommend this series. Totally love it. All right, next we have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I gave it 3 stars, and I said, nothing interesting, forced her to feel how hard he was. Ew. I don't remember writing that. But yeah, I hated that. Next is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. I gave this book 4 stars, and I wrote, I'm still heartbroken over this book. And then parentheses, it kickstarted me writing a new book idea that's now over 400 pages long. True fact. The next book was Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. I gave it 4 stars, and I wrote, an incredible read everyone should read. It made me sad. Life sucks for minorities. Next is A Place to Hang the Moon by Kate Albus. I gave it 5 stars, and I wrote, so cute. I hope to read with my kids someday. Then we have Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I gave it 4 stars, and I wrote, I don't get the hype. It's fine, but I kept wanting more. Then we have Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave it 4 stars, and I said, listen to the audiobook for awesomeness. Dull at some points, but overall a great story. Next was Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I gave it 4 stars, and I wrote, a confusing mess that I still don't understand. Then I read Legendary by Stephanie Garber, 4 stars. I wrote, better, but still so confusing. Then I read Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I gave it 4 stars, and I wrote, a great end to the story. Again, don't get the hype, but it's good. And then I read the last in the Caraval series, which is called Finale by Stephanie Garber. I gave this one 3 stars, and I said, not a fan of the series. I don't comprehend why. Doesn't feel like the same universe as Once Upon a Broken Heart, but it's supposed to be. Then we have The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic by Brianne Randall. I gave this one 2 stars, and I wrote, don't advertise as like Gilmore Girls with magic when it's nothing like that. Then we have Finley Donovan Jumps the Gun by Elle Cosimano. I gave this another 5 stars, and I said, this might be my favorite of the series. I love the characters so much. Then we have Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. I gave it 5 stars, and I wrote, my youth is temporarily restored. I adore the Lunar Chronicles and the characters in them. Then we have Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. I gave it 4 stars and wrote, interesting premise. I hate miscommunication tropes. Just say what you're thinking. And this is where I started reading Sarah J. Maas books, and I started with A Court of Thorns and Roses. I gave it 4 stars, and I wrote, I enjoyed it. I loved it so much more after finishing the series. Then I read Billy Summers by Stephen King. I gave it 3 stars, and I wrote, my first Stephen King. He is a great writer, but the story wasn't very exciting to me. I'm just scared of tackling a thriller. Haha. Then we have book 2 in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Mist and Fury. I gave this book 5 stars, and I wrote, best of the series. I love this book. Then I read Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer, which is Twilight from Edward's perspective. I gave that 4 stars, and I wrote, another healing of my youth. It's not good, but it has a higher rating due to nostalgia. Then we read A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. 4 stars. I wrote, the series should have ended here, but I enjoyed it. All right, next we have Things You Save in a Fire by Catherine Center. I gave this book 1 star, and I wrote, never hated a book more. Yep. Next we have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is another one of those rare 6-star books. I absolutely love it, and I wrote, my favorite romance I've read in years. I adore it so much. Highly recommend to everyone who believes in love. I love this book. All right, then we read the entire Renegade series by Marissa Meyer. For the first book, Renegades, I gave it 5 stars, and I wrote, she stole my idea. I really enjoyed this one. The second book is Arch Enemies. I gave that one 5 stars, and I said, started to dislike the female main character, but this book had some of my favorite scenes of all time. The final book in that series, Supernova, I gave 4 stars, and I wrote, definitely hate the female main character. The stakes were too high, that it was too overwhelming and felt too hopeless. Then we read Finley Donovan Rolls the Dice by El Casamano again. 5 stars, and I wrote, another fun one in the series. I hope she never stops writing these books. Next, I read Shatter Me by, I don't know how to say her name. We're gonna give it a try, but please forgive me because I know I'm gonna say this wrong. It's Tahereh Mafi. I gave that book 3 stars. I wrote, not great. My hope is this is just the groundwork for the series. The audiobook reader sounds like a child. Would have loved if I was 17. Then we read A Court of Frost and Starlight. I gave it 3 stars, and I wrote, the most pointless book I've ever read, but there's nothing technically wrong with it. Then I read Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. I gave this book 5 stars, and I wrote, finished in a single day, such a beautiful love story, felt so connected and proud of the main female character. I love this book. And then I read If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. I gave this book 3 stars, and I said, kind of dull, truly not much else to say. All right, then I finished the ACOTAR series with A Court of Silver Flames. I gave this book 4 stars, and I wrote, I still don't like Nesta, and that ruins things for me, but the story itself is decent. Then we read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I gave it 4 stars, and I wrote, always love her storytelling. I think this is my favorite of her books. Then we read Dune by Frank Herbert. I gave this book 4 stars, and I wrote, I think it would make a fantastic movie, and I understand why my husband likes it so much, even if I don't. Then we read Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies by Catherine Mack. I gave this book 3 stars, and I wrote, I don't want to be a detective. Don't break the fourth wall to chastise me for not figuring the mystery out. Then we read Gilded by Marissa Meyer. I'm on a quest to finish all of her books. I gave this book 4 stars, and I wrote, I love her writing so much, and this was a very interesting idea. Then I read the sequel to that, which is Cursed. I gave that one also 4 stars, and I said, again, she makes the stakes so high that it's overwhelming and just feels hopeless. Even when everything turns out, I'm a little too exhausted to care. Then we read Unravel Me by Tahereh Mafi. I gave that one 3 stars, and I wrote, I don't think I'll finish the series. Again, I would have been obsessed if I was 17. So yeah, that's where I ended the Shatter Me series, but let me know if you think I should finish it. Again, I'm not 17, I'm 34 years old, so I don't know that it's for me. Then we read Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I gave that book 4 stars, and I said, it was fine. I don't have the desire to read on. I don't feel connected to anyone. Then we read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I gave it 5 stars, and I said, made me cry twice. Such a sweet story. Never rooted for a couple more, and I absolutely love it. Next is Artifacts of an Ex by Jennifer Chen. I gave it 2 stars, and I wrote, the author doesn't understand teenagers or kept forgetting that that her characters were teenagers. I loved the premise, was very unsatisfied. Next is The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. I gave it 5 stars and I wrote, wow, I'm so happy my sister recommended this. Not at all what I was expecting, but I was hooked the whole way through. All right, next we have The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. I gave it 4 stars and I wrote, the most unrealistic premise, but I had a lot of fun. Then we read Funny Story by Emily Henry. I gave it 4 stars and I wrote, I'm always so torn on Emily Henry books. I always love the idea, love parts, but never fully feel satisfied by the end. This is a me problem. Then I read The Banned Bookshop of Maggie Banks by Shauna Robinson. I gave it 4 stars and I wrote, I found myself wishing I could reread immediately after finishing a simple but lighthearted book. Then we had Things We Know by Heart by Jessie Kirby. I gave it 4 stars and I wrote, adored the premise, female main character frustrated me at the end. I despised that the male character has the exact name of my ex. Then we read Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. I gave it 4 stars and wrote, again, didn't feel invested in the characters, but the ending made me really excited to continue the series. Then we read The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth. I gave it 4 stars and wrote, another wow. I love how this author does a thriller mystery that's so tame and humorous, but you feel the tension. Next we have The Love of My Afterlife by Christy Greenwood. I gave this book 4 stars and I wrote, a simple romance, not what I was expecting, but I had fun all the same. Also, I read this book while on my St. George vacation and I have an entire video on it. I'll link it down below. Next we have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I gave it 4 stars and I wrote, I literally forgot that I read this only a week later. Enjoyed it as I was reading, but very forgettable. Then we have Mad About You by Mari McFarlane. I gave it 4 stars and wrote, absolutely love the writing style, and I was fully hooked the whole way through. Then we read Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. I gave it 5 stars and wrote, I sped through this book so fast. I was so invested in the story and hating the main character and wanting to see her downfall. Then we read The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I gave it 3 stars and I wrote, this book made me feel very old. I would have loved it when I was a teen, but not in my 30s. Next we have Instant Karma by Marissa Meyer. I gave that one 4 stars and wrote, not my favorite Marissa Meyer book, but a casual, delightful read. Next I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Millars. I gave that book 2 stars and said, everyone was terrible and made me frustrated. Then we had Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I gave it 2 stars and wrote, started out incredible, went downhill fast. I didn't comprehend what went wrong. Next we have Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is a rare 6 star for me. I wrote, so incredible, I was hooked from the start. This type of magic and romance in a book is my bread and butter. Highly recommend this one. Next is Reggie and Delilah's Year of Falling by Elsie Bryant. I gave it 5 stars and wrote, just an adorable hug of a book. Teens falling in love is so innocent and adorable. Then we read Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. I gave that one 4 stars and I wrote, first half is such a drag, but I really liked where the ending went. Still not hyped for the series as a whole though. Next was The Breakup Pact by Emma Lord. I gave it 3 stars and wrote, don't remember this book, and I read it a couple weeks before writing this. Clearly forgettable. I still can't tell you a single thing that happens in that book. Next we read Legend Born by Tracy Dion. I gave it 4 stars and wrote, this book had too much info dumping, but as a whole was a beautiful book. I'm excited to finish the series. And then we read The Last Samsara by Kristen Ciccarelli. I gave this one 5 stars and I wrote, officially can declare that I have a new favorite author. I adored this book. Give me romance and magic and I'm all in. Plus dragons. Next was Haunted Ever After by Jen DeLuca. I gave it 4 stars and wrote, this was a fun read, not great, but I enjoyed myself. Then we have Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter. I gave it 5 stars and wrote, made me cry and miss my Duolingo streak after 5 weeks of no skips. I didn't love the audiobook readers, but the story was great. Finally, the very last book that I read this year was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. I gave that one 5 stars and I wrote, my favorite of the series. I like how it was a bunch of short stories because we could get to the point much faster than in the rest of the series. That's it. That's all the books I read this year. That was 67 books. My throat kind of hurts. I'm going to take a mini break, figure out the lighting situation, get some water, and then we'll talk about my top 5 favorite books. I can't figure out the lighting situation, so I apologize. Also, I forgot my honorable mention book, which is this one. I don't have a number rating, but I will say I wish that there was more writing in it, but I still absolutely love this book. so fun to look at, and my daughter loves it too. Okay, I ranked my top 10 books, but I'm only going to go into detail about the top 5. At number 10, we had Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer. At number 9, we had A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. At number 8, we had Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. At number 7, we had The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. At number 6, we had Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. And then starting our top 5, we have One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. So I don't want to go into too much detail about any of these books, but this book was incredible. I loved the writing in this book. I loved the love story more than anything in the world. It was so adorable to see this love story happening between two women who like lived in two different time periods, and they met on a train, and it was so cute. I was obsessed. I was so invested in their relationship, and then like when we got to the end, I'm trying not to spoil things, when you like didn't know if it would work out because they're from two different time periods, I was so invested, and it got me so emotional. It made me cry. I loved this book. I highly, highly recommend it. It's so good. At number 4, I put The Last Namsara. This book is so good. It has like royalty and dragons and magic and all the things in a book that I love. Forbidden romance. This book was just so good. And now I know that I love Kristen Ciccarelli. I love her writing style. I love what she writes about. And I'm so excited to finish the series. My husband gave me this series for Christmas, and so I'm going to be starting the second book soon, and I'm so excited. Taking the number 3 spot is The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. This book truly took over my entire life for like the first 6 months of this year. It was all I could think about. I kept this book on my nightstand for 6 months straight, and I would just every night open it and reread my favorite passages every single night. I love this book so much. It just absorbed me in a way that most books don't. It was all I could think about. But the slow burn romance in this is insane, and I love it. And then the whole ending, it was just so incredibly done. I could talk about this book forever, but I'd have to spoil a lot of things, and I'm not going to do that today. So if you want me to do a whole video on this series, I would love to talk about the series because I truly love it. Taking the number 2 spot is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This book is a romance that takes place in present day, but it still has magical elements, and I loved that. Because if a book has magic and romance, I'm gonna love it. But I truly adored this book. I thought the writing style was perfect. This book just felt like getting a big hug. It felt so warm and fuzzy. It was bright and yellow, and I love this book. Highly recommend. And taking the number 1 spot this year was Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. As I just said, if it has magic and romance in it, I love it. And that's what this is. It's about a witch, so she has magic, falling in love with a witch hunter, so forbidden romance. And I love this book so much. I bought this for myself for my birthday, and I have all these tabs in it. I keep tabbing my favorite parts. I keep going back to this book over and over again. I adore this book. Obviously, I recommend it. This was my number 1 read of the year. Highly recommend. We're going to briefly talk about some of my reading goals for 2025. So I would really like to finish the Last Namsara series as well as the Throne of Glass series, and then maybe start the Crescent City. I don't know. I don't think I'm a big Sarah J. Maas fan. I'm also very excited to read Onyx Storm, coming out in January. I already have the pre-order. I'm very excited and also very stressed. I would also like to complete my quest of finishing every Marissa Meyer book. I think that I only have 1 left, so let's get that done this year. I think my biggest goal of this year, though, is to read more physical books, because while I love audiobooks and I'm never gonna give those up, I think that I just want to read more physical books this year. I started audiobooks after I had stopped reading for like 5 years straight, and I just wanted to get back into reading. So I went to audiobooks because it seemed like the easiest way for me to do that, and it was amazing, and it really helped me get back into reading, which was something that I have always loved since I was a child, but I just stopped because of motherhood and and flashbacks from being an English major in college. So audiobooks really helped me get back into reading, but now I think I'm at a point where I can read more physical books, and I'm excited to do that. And as far as a number, I don't really know what to do, because my reading goal for this year was 40 books and I read 67, and I was just not expecting that. I don't ever expect myself to read that much because I have kids and my life revolves around my kids, and I can't be reading a book when I was supposed to be taking care of my kids. That's also why audiobooks are so great for me. So I don't know what I want to put as my reading goal for this year, but I think I'm just gonna stick with 50 and we'll see what happens. I think that's where we're gonna end this video. I really enjoyed making this one. I'm excited to make more book videos in 2025. That's something that I just have been wanting to do for a while now, just talk more about books, because I love books and I do little else other than read or write. Leave a comment down below if you read any of these books that I read. I would love to hear your thoughts on them, and give me all your book recommendations for the new year. I'm so excited to keep reading. I'm so excited to read with you guys. Also, I'm so excited that I hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you guys so much. I'm so happy you're here. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye. Love you. My foot is numb.